In this video, I'm going to talk about what to do on the first days when you start a new job. In an ideal world, you'd have a really high quality induction. So you'd meet with the manager of the work area, you'd have a buddy because that manager might be in lots of meetings, you would meet the key stakeholders, you would have everything kind of mapped out so that in the first week you felt like it was a really smooth transition. Now in reality, that doesn't often happen. It may be more likely that you arrive at your new organization and your computer doesn't switch on properly, you don't have the right access, you probably don't even have a security card, your manager might be sick or unwell or unavailable, and you ring through and the people may be surprised and they not know that you're starting. So sometimes the first couple of days, they're not really smooth. And because you've made a big shift potentially to a new organization or a new job, it can sometimes feel like, I don't really feel that valued, which can be a little bit tricky. So in this video, we're going to talk about what are the things that you can do to personally take control of what you've got control over to make sure that those first couple of days are as beneficial to you as possible. So first things first is getting really clear on the who's who. So who are the decision makers, who are the people you need to interact with, and how you interact with them. One of the best things I did when I joined my new organization is they actually had set up appointments with key stakeholders, so senior managers in the organizations. And it was so good to meet with them and actually hear about what was their responsibility, what were their teams like, how did my role interact with that role. So you got such good context. And when I saw those people around the office, I knew who they were. I felt really comfortable having a conversation with them. And it was a really great way of feeling comfortable in a new organization. Whereas if I hadn't have met them, I may be making guesses about who are they? What do they do? How do I connect with them? And I may have made lots of mistakes because I don't really know anything about them. So if your work area hasn't really set up appointments, I'd be having a conversation with your manager and saying, who are the key stakeholders that I need to contact with them? How do you think they'd prefer to be contacted with? When do you think might be the best time to contact them? And what might I say before I initiate the conversation? And so that when you're sending those people an appointment, you can sort of say, hi, I'm Chris, I'm the new employee in this particular role. I've heard you're a key stakeholder in the organization. I'd really love to touch base with you for 30 or so minutes to hear about you and your team. That's all you need to say. And once you connect with those people, just thank them afterwards and say, thanks, that was so useful. Introduce yourself as well about what you've done because they might, you're new to them as well. So it's really important that you introduce yourself. So that's one of the key things, is to introduce yourself to the stakeholders. It's probably likely there'll be a bit of lag time. Is that the right word, lag time? There'll be a bit of downtime in those first couple of weeks when you get started, right? Times when you don't know what you should be doing and you don't know enough to know what you can kind of make up. So I would be looking through any computer systems, hopefully, that you've got access to, and just looking through any relevant information. And you're not going to know what's relevant, right? But going through directories, seeing reports, getting a handle on documents that have been produced. Hopefully you've got some handover stuff from the last person that was in the position. And just familiarizing yourself with whatever the systems and processes are. And knowing that it's going to take time to figure all that stuff out, so give yourself a break. You've got a bit of a grace period when you first start to be like, oh, I'm new here, it's my first day, it's my first week, it's my first month. Like, you do have that general flexibility, so hopefully you're not going to be thrown in the deep end and expected to perform like someone had been in the role for an extended period of time. Most of the time, customers will navigate to people that they know and trust, so they're likely to rely on other people before contacting you because they already don't have to explain who they are. So customers probably won't be demanding of you depending on what your specific role is. Now, some roles obviously have a more in-depth induction. If you're working at a contact center, they're going to have induction days where they train you about all the systems and processes. But for a lot of other roles, it's kind of like you make it up as you go along. Often people, when they start a role, they might sort of suffer with imposter syndrome. So the role you might be in might be a couple of levels higher than what you've done in the past. And when you're new in an organization and you're kind of a bit clunky and it seems like everyone else knows what they're doing, imposter syndrome can come in. And imposter syndrome is where you don't feel worthy for a position. You feel like you're an actor playing the role of whatever that position is. Imposter syndrome is consistent for across the entire organization, all the way up from CEO to someone who's just started. It's really common for most people to have that experience. I remember when I was doing training and facilitating, and I heard my manager say, look, we aim for scores of a net promoter score of, I don't know what it was, around 8. And I remember I did my first training, I thought it was really good, and it got below that. And I remember thinking, oh, am I even in the right role? Is this right for me? So I had all those questions and I felt like an imposter, right? I felt like they just made some grand mistake. But then over time, I actually used that to energize myself to say, okay, I've now got a goal and it's above that. And I did a session on giving and receiving feedback and I got around a 9.4 or something like that, which is really, really high. And so it just took a bit of time for me to get into the rhythm of how things operated. I had the capabilities, it was just about applying those. So it's really important just to remind yourself over time that it does take a bit of time to get to know things. I'm a fairly anxious person by nature, and that comes from a real drive for conscientiousness, to do things well and for people to like them. And I always thought when I joined a new organization, I'd feel overwhelmed and stressed because I didn't know how to do things. I'd been in one organization for a long time and I knew those systems back to front. I could pretty much plan how the day was going to work out. And then I've joined a new organization and I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know how anything works. But rather than feel overwhelmed, I felt the opposite. I felt free because it was exciting. Like even the boring systems that they use day to day were new to me. So I'll be like, how does this work? This does what? This connects in this way? How does that connect with that? And so rather than be overwhelmed, I felt really curious. I was kind of like, this is interesting. But I had a very supportive manager. I had a very supportive team that recognized that it does take time and they were very respectful. Not everyone is granted that same privilege. So you've got to make the most of it. So one of the things I really consider in the first couple of days is what's in your control. So your control may look like your attitude. Okay, I'm going to be open and curious to learning new things. It can be around how you introduce yourself, so how you tell what your story is. Don't be afraid to bring in a cake or morning tea and just sort of say, hey, this is the way I welcome people. That's going to help buy you friends really easily. Don't be afraid if you don't remember people's names. It took me a while. And just kind of try to use names in conversation just to reinforce them. But the people you interact with, you'll learn those names over time. And just be kind to yourself to actually just allow yourself to be in a learning space, to recognize that you are recruited into a position as a new starter. So you will act like a new starter. And new starters make mistakes, they fail, they send things to the wrong people, they say the wrong things. That is totally normal and expected. And it's that learning and that bouncing back from that that's going to hold you in success in the longer term. So best of luck in your new job. I know you'll do really, really well. And just remember, you can only be new once for so long, so embrace that opportunity. That's your time to ask those questions and to learn and grow, because there'll be a time at which you're flat out, people know who you are, and you'll be expected to deliver. So embrace the time where you can still sort of say, I'm new here, it's my first day. Thank you very much. If you like this content, like and subscribe. All right, see you later. See you later now. Bye-bye now.